I've always loved Celtic culture and history. It's been an interest of mine since I was a kid. But my true obsession with the culture didn't start until about 5 years ago. It was the summer of 2017. My uncle was getting married to a wonderful woman. The wedding was beautiful. Because he has Scottish heritage, there was a bagpiper there. This bagpiper instantly caught my attention. I always loved listening to pipes online, and hearing a bagpipe in person was magical for me. For 2 to 3 years after that, I dreamed of playing the pipes, but because I was in the middle of nowhere in northern Minnesota, I didn't really think I had a chance to. That was until my mom contacted the bagpiper that played at my uncle's wedding and asked him to give me lessons. He accepted, and I'm still in lessons with him to this day. But today, instead of learning a new tune, I've decided to interview my instructor, Donald P. Scobie. Before we begin, however, let's get some background information on the guy. Don is a published author of quite a few books, the pipe major of Sam's Post 1889, and he is the owner of Whidbey Island Baking Company. So Don, what do you think you're most recognized for, in and out of the piping community?
Within the piping community and culture, I would say I'm most recognized for playing Highland bagpipes, more specifically playing with the Celtic rock band that I started sometime before 2008, which is Nay Regrets. And it's been a simple combination of Highland bagpipes, drum kit, Highland snare, and belly dancers. Unfortunately, the band has kind of gone in and out of hiatus, and right now we're trying to come back out. But this has also gotten attention within the piping community itself. Some of the people know about us. I think a lot of people don't like us because they consider us as breaking the rules. I would say that Nay Regrets has garnered me the most attention, or at least positive attention.
What did you mean by breaking the rules?
That's a good question. As I have gathered modern day piping between the martial element and the competition element and exactness that is sought within the playing for competition, I think there have been a lot of perceived restrictions developed within the scene itself, that you must play in a certain way. They'll tell you that there's only 9 pitches that can be played on the chanter of a Highland bagpipe. There's more, there's 15, 16, 17, depending on how you do it. But those folks will tell you that those other pitches are wrong and bad, and they'll even tell you that they don't exist. It's a matter of opinion. And that's that one side of the fence versus the other, which is right here. Are you not breaking the rules, or are you breaking the rules? So that's essentially what I mean.
What bagpipers are your biggest influences?
This is also a question that I rather appreciate, and I hear from time to time. I think pipers are not asked this. I am of the opinion that there are pipers that are an influence, and also there's other music, be it rock, be it jazz, that sort of thing, that can be influential on Highland bagpipers. Keeping it simple to those Highland bagpipers, though, I would go to say that Fred Morrison, as I mentioned before, 2 guys unfortunately no longer with us, a guy named Martin Bennett and a guy named Gordon Duncan. I think they were rather amazing.
What got you interested in Celtic culture?
I was raised with it, really. My folks knew about our heritage and exposed us to it. I grew up with New York 9th Regiment record, which a lot of pipers consider to be a really bad record, but it got me into piping. I listened to that when I was growing up. My folks took me to Highland Games. They took me to different performances of pipe bands. So it's something that has always been around.
Do you celebrate any Celtic holidays or eat any Celtic foods?
I wouldn't say that I grew up with a whole lot. I mean, maybe, not much more than shortbread. But with getting back into piping, with getting into the community more as a young adult, that's when I started getting into some other things. As for example, there's Hogmanay, which is the Scottish observation of New Year's Day. I was a part of a group that would romp around Seattle in of our own interpretation, but a fairly standard way that Scots do yet today for celebrating New Year's. There's other things that I've ended up further exploring and adopting within Patriotic Piper that I mentioned earlier has Scottish and Irish recipes in it, which for me was not just about writing it into the book to produce something to sell. It was also for me to learn about it. It had its payoffs too, not just in having a better product. It was also expanding my own awareness, and that's really been my experience overall.
What does Celtic culture mean to you?
Yeah, to answer that specifically to me is difficult because I think it's actually a really broad question. One of the things that a lot of people aren't aware of outside of the Scottish Irish heritage or community is a lot of people think, oh, Celtic, Scottish people, Irish people. Okay, well, in antiquity, predating the Roman Empire, oh my God, right? You had the Celtic Empire, which consisted of essentially 7 nations. To me, that's not a narrow topic because you have different practices, different food, different clothing, different languages. To me, it's an umbrella statement. It's not one that I can sum up, but I would certainly tell people if they're so motivated, go find out more, starting with looking up about the 7 nations.
How do you think Celtic culture has been represented in the entertainment industry?
I think it's been poor. I think it's getting better, which, I mean, notoriously they're going for fun, they're going for funny. So, okay, that's great, but what influence does that give the public awareness? When we get into some things that are newer, it's getting better and better, but a lot of it just visits the parts that Hollywood wants, and it's either a clothing affectation, it's something humorous, it's a moment to be cute, it's a caricature of certain types of warriors, and this sort of thing. It really doesn't express all of what Celtic heritage is.
Do you think technology might have had an impact on this improvement?
I think it has affected it in a positive way because basically the technology is less expensive, therefore more available. I think it's better quality. It's great to see where filmmakers, TV makers, artists, storytellers, where they're looking at that and saying, let's really bring this out. Let's really show this. And let's actually not just skip over it. Let's actually give it some time to show it and show it well, show it right, or considerably so.
What other Celtic instruments do you play?
I play one, I dabble with others. One of those, the one that I play the most is a type of Irish drum called a bodhrán. It's essentially a drum that is played with a short stick, but you hit the drum with both ends of the stick and it gives an interesting rhythm. Oh, actually, bodhrán is not my second best interest. My second best instrument would be Scottish small pipes, which I play 2 types there. But I also dabble in tin whistle, which is recognized largely as being Irish, but I think it was brought to Ireland as an inexpensive instrument from the English. The one other that I would love to get working on is Irish uilleann pipes. Some of the problem there is time, some of the problem is availability of the instrument, and some of that problem is that there's not a lot of people making them and the cost is prohibitive. I've also done a lot of singing historically. I've done a lot of different styles, and I've brought my singing skills to Scottish and Irish tunes.
With singing, wasn't that how pipers of the past used to teach each other songs?
That's my understanding, yes. My understanding is that the music style existed in Scotland. A number of the music styles actually existed in Scotland prior to Highland bagpipes arriving. They were played on different instruments. They were sung, with pipes in particular. My understanding, and this is something that I have been told within my upbringing learning pipes, so it's lore. Anyway, my understanding is the tunes, an instructor to a student would not teach the tune on the instrument. They would sit around all day. The instructor would sing the tune to the student and they would work on that throughout the day. And then essentially the instructor would say, okay, go home, come back tomorrow and play it on the instrument to me. And that that singing style was called cantred, which means mouth music. It is representative of the music. So take, for example, Scotland the Brave. Right, so that's the first line of that tune. What the instructor would do is sing it to them in kind of a nonsensical manner that is representative of those pieces and not a set way of singing those individual little parts, right? So it may sound as though hatam prita tu dum pritam pita piti dum prita. And I could do that 10 different times, 10 different ways, right? And essentially that was how we understand that it was taught. There's other things too, and I think this is more relevant to Pibroch, the classical music, where the individual pieces were related to parts within nature, right? So someone might say, play this, da-da, whatever it is, the same way as the such and such bird chirps in spring. Play this as long as it takes for a wave to come ashore. You know, these different things. I don't know that as fact. That's been what's told to me within my career of piping.
What music-related project have you participated in that you most enjoyed or are most proud of?
I'd certainly say Nay Regrets. There was a band prior to Nay Regrets called the Bag and Pipe Hoppers, which was fun and we had good audiences, but to me the music was never quite what it could have achieved. It was kind of disjointed. When the wheels fell off of that band, I just rolled with it and created Nay Regrets out of the dust. And we always had better synergy to our shows. We had larger and more enthusiastic audiences. We also had belly dancers, which, you know, that's really fun and has also given me, again, learning about a culture that I didn't otherwise know. I mentioned before that Nay Regrets has been on hiatus. Right now I'm trying to bring us back out and bring us into doing the music that is some of the stuff that we've thought about for a long time, but never really had the time or the facilities to do. So hopefully that will start happening.
What advice would you give to someone wanting to learn more?
You know, I mentioned that I grew up with that New York 9th Regimental Pipes and Drums record. And other pipers think that it's somehow a poor record, poor example, something like this. As I said, it's part of what got me into piping. So, okay, sure, there's that bad depiction of Scottish heritage. Okay, but if it makes you ask, okay, but what is this really, right? Even Braveheart is this combination between history and myth, and a lot of that myth is really wrong history. Scottish heritage is not just, you know, some guy with bad hair on the back of a horse yelling freedom, you know, and then running with a sword that turns into a hammer that turns back into a sword. If you ever notice that in one of the charges, his weapon keeps on magically changing. You know, the simple truth of the matter is, okay, those of us that know more about the history and the culture might look at those and go, that's not so good. If it gets somebody else to turn around and say, I want to know more about this. I want to know the actual history behind this. Okay, go and watch that, say, bad film, and then go and ask someone, you know, what book should I read? What do you know about this? What is the food? May I try some? May I make it with you? What is the music, right? Get yourself into these things. There's a book, How the Scots Invented the Modern World. It's a thick book full of information. It's a little bit dry, but I found the information just absolutely fascinating, and that's what drove me through there. Get yourself involved. Go to, for example, with Scottish heritage, go to Highland Games. Go ahead and go to Highland Games, approach a tent, and I think both within the Scottish community and a lot of heritages, if you show up, if you show interest, if you show respect, they'll welcome you in. As I like to say, they'll make a place for you at the table, right? Show up and say, I'm not a part of this, but I'd like to know more about it. And most cultures, they'll gladly welcome you in.